Let's see here. Am I live? I believe so. So we just got news of who the Kansas City Chiefs season opener will be against. It will be Thursday Night Football, of course, and it will be Thursday Night Football against the Baltimore Ravens. So there's that. Am I live now? My live timer just reset, so I do not know if I was live yet or not. But I have no idea if I am live right now. But we just got news of who the Kansas City Chiefs season opener will be against. It will be against the Baltimore Ravens. Is anybody in here? Am I live yet? It stuttered on me a couple times, so I do not know if this is working. It is not allowing me to change my thumbnail. We'll figure this out later. But the Kansas City Chiefs will be playing the Baltimore Ravens Week 1, Thursday Night Football. This is interesting for the following reasons. We have here a list of the Kansas City Chiefs home games for the 2024 season. The Broncos, the Chargers, the Raiders, the Ravens, the Bengals, the Texans, the Saints, and the Buccaneers. This is probably the second most interesting opening week matchup because we knew the Kansas City Chiefs were probably going to. Were they definitely going to open at home? I think now that Super Bowl champions open the season at home. So if we knew they were going to open the season at home, this was the second most interesting matchup that could have been, in my opinion. For me, the number one matchup that it could have been as far as interest and intrigue is concerned is the Cincinnati Bengals. The Bengals are something of an actual rivalry for the Kansas City Chiefs at this point. The Ravens simply have not been. The Ravens took the number 1 seed last year from the Kansas City Chiefs and could not hang on to it in the playoffs. One might say they fumbled the number 1 seed at the goal line. Now, the away opponents for the Kansas City Chiefs this season are somehow even less compelling than the home slate. The Broncos, the Chargers, and the Raiders, of course, but also the Atlanta Falcons, the Carolina Panthers, the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Cleveland Browns. Then we get the Buffalo Bills and the San Francisco 49ers. The interesting quirk of this, how you doing, Ruben? I'm glad someone is letting me know that I am live because I was worried there for a second. It stuttered on me a couple times. The quirks of having the number 1 schedule are that the Chiefs will be playing the Ravens, the Texans, the 49ers, the Buffalo Bills. These are going to be difficult games, assuming that they are not all sort of jammed into the beginning of the schedule. We have to believe that the Kansas City Chiefs will have a decent shot at sort of how you doing, Chad, Scott? Good to see you guys. Just popped in during lunch. Glad to know I am not alone. But if these opponents are somewhat evenly distributed across the schedule, these number 1 sort of opponents, it's still possible that the Kansas City Chiefs will get to skip one of them. The NFL has been moving towards having more divisional games later in the year so that late season slate are rarely skippable games because an in-division game is worth 1.5 games. So it's very difficult to get the kind of lead in your division that the Kansas City Chiefs have enjoyed the past few years. So it's possible that the Chiefs do get to skip one of the annual bye week, it seems, that is the final week of the regular season for these Kansas City Chiefs. Does anyone have any thoughts on this being the game in week one, the Ravens versus the Kansas City Chiefs on Thursday Night Football? One thing that I will say is also pleasant about this setup with the Super Bowl winners, getting a Thursday night game out of the way the first week, I think is beneficial for the team. Not having to risk that type of cramming games into a shorter. Of course, the Chiefs are going to be a primetime team, so they're going to get those sorts of games thrown at them. They're going to get their schedule thrown off. One of the good things about Andy Reid is that he's so regimented that he understands these things and takes them into account before the season even gets started. Ruben says, easy peasy Japanesey about the Ravens. It's interesting because the Kansas City Chiefs, it is about the Super Bowl every week. And that is how the Kansas City Chiefs approached last season, isn't it? They weren't playing as if it were the Super Bowl every week. They were taking last season kind of like an NBA team. Let's just hobble along. We're going to figure this thing out sort of week by week. And by the time we get into the tournament, we're going to have it nailed down. Chad says, I like it better in a division matchup. In addition, I would rather play a tough team week one. A tough team week one, yes. It is, however, a Harbaugh team. Now, one thing that I will say for the Harbaughs is that they are going to have their teams ready for week one in the way that many NFL coaches simply do not. So having a tough team week one is normally an advantage for the Kansas City Chiefs because the Chiefs run such a difficult training camp. I don't see the early season advantage being the Chiefs benefiting from an early season advantage versus a Harbaugh team. Ruben says we adapt every week. It was tough last year though, because there weren't many pieces that had adaptability. And it was not until the playoffs when Mahomes said it's do or die, we're going to start running the football a little bit more, that things ended up taking off for the offense. Scott says regular season is Super Bowl practice for us. That's right. It's like the NBA. Man, the past few years, the Chiefs have played the season like an NBA team. It is an interesting thing to see. I don't think I have ever noticed this in football. If you look at the Patriots and the run that they went on, they were constantly bit and piecing their way through those seasons. Ravens always have a good defense, Ruben says. Drop country last year. I don't know what drop country means. Chad says, I feel like the Chargers will be built the same way the Ravens are built, as a team, strong O-line, pounding and running game, and a tough defense. I do too, and that sort of makes me worry because, not worry, but feel that the Kansas City Chiefs might finally have a run for their money in the division. I've never been a big believer in Justin Herbert. But if he is think back to those Marty Schottenheimer teams, because that's what he's going to be building for the Chargers, is a Marty Schottenheimer style team. If Marty Schottenheimer ever had a Justin Herbert, he might have won the Super Bowl. Marty Schottenheimer with a Justin Herbert that's going to throw the ball 15 times a game. I know that the story is out there on Justin Herbert that he's an elite quarterback and things simply haven't gone right. Guys, I don't think Harbaugh is going to come in and care. I think Harbaugh is going to come in and say, look, this team has been yours for seasons now, and where did you go? So we're going to do things my way, And if you don't like it, someone else will give you a contract, I'm sure. So it's going to be interesting. So something I'm going to be making a video about sometime soon. I made a video about this a little bit earlier in the off season. It feels like the division has waved the white flag. Think about it. There are so many things going on in the division that scream, maybe next year. We got new coaches. We got rookie quarterbacks. We've got head coaches that were the interim coach. I don't know of anything that says that is a bigger, hey, we're going to see if this works, and no biggie, than adopting an interim coach. Now look, he's an intense guy, and maybe he's going to do very, very well with what he does. Beat us last year. But that move alone, and not to mention their quarterback situation. Gary says, what do you think of UDFA Penn State Jacobs? Curtis Jacobs. So I have a video on Curtis Jacobs. I think that he is the latest in a long, long line of linebackers that Brett Veach has somehow acquired for next to nothing. You signed Drew Tranquil for $1 million. You got the best linebacker in his draft class in the second round with Nick Bolton. All of the linebackers that he gets end up working out. I was a huge fan of Jack Cochran. I still think that he can play NFL linebacker. I think he has all the tools to end up on the field for someone somewhere eventually. He reminds me a lot of Scott Fujita in many ways. Guys, I don't think it's going to happen in Kansas City. Brett Veach just keeps finding linebackers, and Curtis Jacobs is absolutely an NFL player. There's no doubt in my mind that Curtis Jacobs is an NFL player. Dennis says Marty and Brian Sipe, and he had Sipho, and he was considered a really good quarterback. The 90s were weird, though. 80s, 90s, very weird time in football. Go back, Trent Green was an 8th rounder. Trent Green, who played how many years in the NFL, started for 3 teams? The Chiefs, the Rams, and the Dolphins? Was it just those 3 teams? But 8th round. The 8th round doesn't even exist anymore. That's a UDFA now. And I understand those quarterbacks happen all the time, but just go back and look at quarterbacks 80s, 90s, that whole era. It was just throwing darts at a board. So Jeff George kicked around the league for about 40 years. Because, like I say about Blaine Gabbert, he's a very big guy with a very strong arm. He'll play professional football as long as he wants to. Have I missed anything here, guys? Does anybody have anything else to add about the Ravens being the opening week salvo for the Kansas City Chiefs? It is an interesting game, probably the second most interesting game with which the Kansas City Chiefs could have opened the season next to the Bengals. The Texans would have been interesting simply because of the quarterback matchup, but I'm not sold on the Texans have done a lot of work this offseason too. The Texans last year reminded me a whole lot of the 2018 Kansas City Chiefs. Chad says, I like it. Bring on the Ravens. Bert says, Ravens versus Chiefs Thursday night opener. Brilliant for the Chiefs. Well, we thought that about the Lions last year too, didn't we? I think that, so here's the great big thing that the Chiefs can do in week 1. Classically, the Kansas City Chiefs are very good early in the season with Andy Reid. The Kansas City Chiefs are very good in week 1 with Andy Reid. That's why it was such a surprise that they lost to the Lions last year. Opening the season with a conference but not division win against a team like the Ravens, the Kansas City Chiefs have the opportunity to set the tone for the entire season. The Kansas City Chiefs have the opportunity to say, we know you took the number 1 seed last year. We took the Super Bowl, but that was cute. So, keep your head up, but it's ours. Scott says, Houston has a lot of momentum and they are young and hungry. Seem to always play us hard AF too. Yeah, the thing we're going to have to watch is whether or not that general manager is as talented as Brett Veach. If their general manager is indeed as talented as Brett Veach, this is going to be the next superpower. This is going to be like how the United States paired or sided with the Soviet Union in World War II, knowing that things were going to be very bad down the road, right? Watching the Texans get that young quarterback that it's just 1 year, but for all intents and purposes, that young quarterback does look very good, does appear to be the real deal for his team. They have made a lot of aggressive moves this offseason. They seem to be very much of the opinion that it is a right now proposition. They're not building for the future. They're trying to win. That general manager has to perform. Those draft picks have to hit. Those free agents have to live up to their contracts. At least most of them, right? A lot of them don't. But Parrish says, I'm so glad we're good early season because there are some good opponents in the first 8 weeks. Have they released the whole schedule? Can someone let me know if they've released the whole? I did not see that they released the first 8 weeks, the whole schedule. Am I wrong about this? Is Parrish on to something? Lego says, think we'll get to see some of the UDFAs play. I do think so. I do think that Curtis Jacobs has a shot to be on the roster. I think that linebacker is a very rough position, so there is always a chance that a couple guys miss a game here and there and you have someone on the field. I really believe, let me look at so Miles Battle is, in my opinion, an athlete that is too tantalizing to let go. We saw the young cornerback that was a Colt, drafted by the Colts last season. Let me see if I can figure out what his name was. We saw him come in. Darius Rush, was that it? We saw him come in and I'm not going to be able to find it. Anyway, we saw him come in, very tantalizing athlete, slipped through the Kansas City Chiefs' fingers. They signed him. I believe they tried to slip him through to their practice squad again, got plucked off the practice squad. So I don't think they're going to make the same mistake with a promising young cornerback this year in Miles Battle. So he might be taking up a spot that maybe he does not deserve by playing time. I think that we will see Ryan Reckow play. I don't think it's going to be for the Kansas City Chiefs, but I think there's a very good chance that he's someone's punter this year. Fabian Levette, I think, is going to get is definitely going to get snaps for this Chiefs defense. I really think Baylor Cupp. I haven't made a video on Baylor Cupp yet. I think that Baylor Cupp might be the fourth tight end here. I think he's going to be one of the first guys that comes off of the practice squad. He's a very good blocking tight end. He's a great big guy. I think that he has more receiving threat in him than he necessarily showed at the college level. Where are we at here? Carson Steele would not surprise me, especially if the Kansas City Chiefs end up carrying 4. I have not made a video yet on Christian Roland Wallace, the defensive back out of USC. I am not sure on him yet. I'm not sure on him. A lot of people had him with draftable grades. I'm not sure that I'm in that camp. So those are kind of the guys, unless I'm missing someone, that have a chance. Ethan Driscoll, maybe. I think that he has to redshirt a year. He's got to learn how to use his feet. He has very long arms. He doesn't use them all that well. But I think he definitely has the tools to be an NFL guy. I think that we will probably see him on the 53 next year. Liam says, I think Ravens will motivate the team to get ready. I have listened to some Raven media and players hoping they could open against the Chiefs. They believe they have a better team and want to prove it. Well, unfortunately, they've probably said those things out loud, and that's how you heard about it, Liam. And if you heard about it, I can guarantee you that Patrick Mahomes has heard about it, and Patrick Mahomes will have something for them. If the Chiefs, I don't know what's going to happen with Rashee Rice. I don't know what's going on there. I think we can very safely assume he's not going to be around for the Ravens game. That might be a bad thing for the Ravens. And here's why. You have Patrick Mahomes, who's probably in the mood to destroy something. He had to deal with all of last season people saying he was broken. And he won the freaking Super Bowl anyway. And now you have everyone in the NFL saying, no, he didn't deserve that. The Kansas City Chiefs lucked their way into another Super Bowl. Okay, say it all offseason. Please, I beg of you, say it all offseason. Because this year, Patrick Mahomes has a couple of wide receivers that run in the 4-2s. And that week 1 matchup against the Ravens, well, golly gee, Patrick Mahomes might be without his possession wide receiver. They might not be first downs that he throws for. They might be touchdowns. He might just be pulling the trigger. Pow, pow, pow. It might be that Patrick Mahomes says, guys, I kind of want to throw for 6,000 yards this year, and if we're going to get that done, we got to start early. You got to get up pretty early in the morning to throw for 6,000 yards, and that means putting up a 50-burger on the Ravens. And if you don't think that at this stage in his career, after being manhandled by Travis Kelce on national television, that Andy Reid doesn't believe he has a thing or two to prove, then you're wrong. Andy Reid, I think this year is going to take some of the reins off. What happens at the wide receiver position is going to... I really, really, really wish they would sign Hunter Renfrow. If they did that, I would have no questions, even after we hear about Rashee Rice. And I mean, I think so. I know this is not going to be the most popular thing to say, right? If you go back and you look at Rashee Rice play last season, he is an adequate receiver. He has proven that he can be the X. He's proven that he can be a number 1 type. There wasn't a whole lot of special plays. And I'm not saying that to demean him. It was his rookie season, right? Absolutely, he has the ability to grow from there. But no matter what happens with his suspension, right? I think we're all assuming at this point he's going to miss games. He was not a liability for the offense, to be certain, but at times he wasn't a strength. And I mean, it wasn't until halfway through the year that, that he really took off, that he really looked like an NFL wide receiver. Those first few weeks, he looked kind of just like a guy, and we thought he was going to be another second round oopsie daisy from Brett Veach. Liam says, where are we at here? Where am I at? Hold on. Bert says, week 1 is Andy Reid coming out of a long off-season bye. Hibernation for the Big Red Bear. That is right, Bert. That is a very good point. And knowing here, May 13th, that you have all of this time to prepare for the Baltimore Ravens should do him some good. Todd says Texans had East schedule plus more film on CJ, not overthinking that game. That's a good point. I do think that no matter what your schedule is, showing some of the potential that they showed says to me they probably do have a chance to be the next superpower. Now, the next superpower means second to the Kansas City Chiefs, so it means the next superpower up. Liam says Ravens have improved their running game and will stay focused. A win over the Chiefs would give them a big boost. Personally, hope no one thinks the Ravens game is a given win. Chiefs will have to play well. I don't think anybody's looking past, probably some people are looking past them. You're probably right. But here's the thing. If the Kansas City Chiefs come out and do win that game, there's no one on the schedule they can't beat. And we will know that for the 8th season in a row. Greg says if we get the Bengals early and we win, it's no longer an exciting matchup to me. Here's a question. If the first quarter of the season, and I know it's 17 weeks now, there's no real quarter, but in Todd Haley fashion, the first quarter of the season, the Chiefs have both the Ravens and the Bengals, and they win both of those games. What is left in this regular season? What is left in this regular season? Those 2 wins in the first 4 weeks, that would be phenomenal. I think so. If those 2 games were in the first 4 weeks and the Chiefs open up 4-0, they might be going for gold. They might be going for undefeated. They might try for that regardless of what it means in week 18. Okay, guys, it's week 17. It's week 18. The Chiefs are 16-0. They've got the number 1 seed all locked up. They are playing someone real. They're playing the Bengals. They're playing the Texans, week 18. What do you want to see them do? Do you want to see them risk injury to go for immortality? I think I do. Chad says the Chiefs averaged 25.35 rush attempts per game. Will they rush more, less, or the same? I think it's possible they end up averaging more runs per game because I think that it is possible they will have an explosive offense. And having an explosive offense, it is possible that in more fourth quarters, they are trying to run the clock out. CJ chimes in. We're already going to the playoffs, so don't risk any of our guys for a perfect season. But that is immortality. These guys have 3 Super Bowl rings, some of them just 2. Let's get to the playoffs. Let's do our best in the playoffs with the guys being fresh. But you have the number 1 seed, so you're going to have a bye week anyhow. This might be a moot point because how many times have the Kansas City Chiefs played their junior varsity squad in that final week of the regular season and won anyway? It might be a moot point anyhow. Well, here's the thing, Ruben. Ruben says, remember the Patriots, TSA. Just saying. Yeah, remember those Patriots. They didn't get it done. You have a chance to be the guys who do get it done. So, in my opinion, really, there's, and you hate to say this, you hate to talk about it in these terms, so don't think about it too much. There's one guy that's irreplaceable. And that's not unique to the Kansas City Chiefs. How many of these teams that have a premier quarterback, is he the only one? Liam says, or CJ says, but doesn't 4 sound better? Oh, absolutely it does. But 4 with 3 in a row and an undefeated season sounds absolutely immaculate. Liam says would depend on injury status. If no serious injuries, go for perfect season. If some significant injuries, need to recover as much as possible for postseason. I don't know, man. I think that is too tempting. We need, Sam says, we need to get John Mechie from the Texans. He is available now that they got a new receiver from the Rams. This will replace Rice because we don't know when and if he'll be back. I'm open to anything at the wide receiver position. The wide receiver position for the Kansas City Chiefs is here's the thing. Way better than last year. I mean, last year was just question marks all the way down. You know who Hollywood Brown is. You don't necessarily know if he'll be available, but you know who he is. Xavier Worthy, you don't know who he is, but you do know a couple things that he can do. After that, you have Rashee Rice, maybe eventually. You know who he is now. And then it's question marks all the way down. So even with the small amount of cement that they have on top of that heap of dung, it's more stable than it was last year. So I don't know. I'm kind of tired of potential at the wide receiver position. I'll say it that way. I'm kind of tired of potential in people that Mahomes is going to throw the ball to. I'm kind of tired of potential being counted on at a position where so many players are divas. Or, like, here's the thing. Rashee Rice was never a diva. He had a yelling match with Mahomes, but he was never a diva. And then this offseason happens. And I'm racking my brain. I've been racking my brain the past couple days trying to remember. I thought I remember there was a little bit of whisper about Rashee Rice maybe having attitude problems coming out of college, but I don't remember anything about character questions like we've seen. I don't remember anything about this. So I think this really sort of blindsided everyone. Ruben says 3-peat and undefeated. I don't know. Health, a little luck has to be on our side. It has to be on your side every football season anyway, right? If L'Jarius Sneed doesn't punch that ball out on the goal line against the Ravens last year, and, that's a 1 in 1,000 play. Maybe, okay, one in 150. I mean, because L'Jarius Sneed has done it before, and he hasn't made 1,000 tackles. But 1 in 150 plays, that works. That's less than 1%. That's what? That's 2/3 of a percent chance that it works. And it worked. So you have to have that regardless. Chad says, what I find encouraging about the defense had 29 takeaways. The offense had 25 giveaways. For a +4, I feel the offense will have less giveaways this season, thus helping the defense. I think I disagree with you, Chad. I think we are going to see retro Mahomes. Now, Mahomes in the NFL has never been a giveaway machine. He's never been an interception provider. He's never just printed turnovers. But he'll throw that ball. He's going to let it go. And we have seen, so in the time since we have seen Mahomes really go off on offense, one of the things that we have seen in contrast to that is Mahomes stop running in the regular season. It's not worth the risk. You're going to win enough games to get to the playoffs. You want to be healthy. Don't run in the regular season. It seems to be the conclusion that Mahomes has come to. So in the time since he was wheeling and dealing, right? He stopped running. Back in the days when he was wheeling and dealing, he would take off every once in a while. So what are the odds that now that he might be back in wheeling and dealing phase, what are the odds that he ends up throwing less? I don't think they're very high. He is going to be back in wheeling and dealing phase while knowing that it's not a good idea to take off. So every once in a while, Patrick Mahomes, I think, is just going to let one fly. And sometimes those are turnovers. And I think he's not going to care because he's got some weapons now. He's got some weapons now. What? Jared Wiley. Here's going to be a couple of interesting things to watch the first 2 or 3 weeks of the season. How was Jared Wiley used? How are the running backs used? Is there a running back that emerges as a pass-catching threat? So if we end up going with a lot of 2 tight end sets, 2 tight end single back sets, guys, I could see Clyde Edwards-Helaire having a little bit of a resurgence in his career. He is who he is, right? He is who he is now. We've seen him for years now. This is going to be his 5th season. But we've never really seen him become involved in the passing game. Not the way that he was in college. And guys, look, I'll tell you, I'll admit it. Clyde Edwards-Helaire probably easily to be considered a bust. I'm not mad at the pick. I'm still not mad at the pick. If you were getting the Clyde Edwards-Helaire that existed in college, would have been absolutely elite for this offense. Now, the Clyde Edwards-Helaire that existed in college was a multifaceted back. He could run the ball, he could catch. We have seen that he's not that great at running the football in the NFL. He gets stopped he's just a little guy. Here's the thing. If we're getting you the ball in the passing game, you're already behind those bigger guys. Man, we could see a reversion to something like that. Sam says all 32 teams were told Rice had an encounter with a gun issue while I did not know that. I remember something coming up late in the process, but I thought it was an attitude problem. I didn't know that it was a gun thing. Well, we got one season out of him, so there's a Super Bowl on the other end of it. Ruben says about Clyde that he got injured a lot. That is true. Prior to last season, I had done the math that Clyde Edwards-Helaire was available less often even than Sammy Watkins. That's not a great track record. Chad says, let's bet a beer on that, my friend. Bet a beer on Clyde? I'm not betting anything on Clyde. I just think that it's possible. Liam says, I'm not betting anything on Clyde. Do you think CEH injury first year changed his potential? I don't. I think that what it did was it just kind of proved that that's what's going to happen to Clyde in the NFL. I mean, Clyde is my height, and I'm just a scrambling armchair. I'm not stepping on the field, right? So I don't think it changed his potential. I think that it was just simply a foreshadowing of things to come. I mean, he's going to get injured in the NFL. Scott says, yeah, allegedly his girlfriend started dating a dude from the basketball team, and then his car got shot up. No charges were ever filed. Oh, wow. Oh, okay. Well, that's probably not getting Rashee Rice back. I guess this is part of this. Oh, well. Gary asks, will we get anything out of Kadarius Toney this year? So there was a video on YouTube that the NFL channel had just recently released. And this is going to be a long story for a short answer, but they released 58 minutes of Patrick Mahomes' greatest plays, something like that. And here's the thing, guys, some of the greatest ones weren't even in there. They were cutting it for time. So his first season as a starter, that play against the 49ers where he rolls out and you know the play. Are you kidding me? That play wasn't even in there. 58 minutes of Mahomes highlights, you don't have that in there. That's wild. Watching that video, highlights from the 2018 and 2019 season, it was absolutely wild how effective Robinson was. It was absolutely wild how effective rookie season Mecole Hardman was. It was wild seeing all of these guys who eventually kind of got run out of town for being absolute drop monsters being effective. And I think the reason I tell that story, the reason I say that is because I got to thinking about Kadarius Toney during that time. And I think it's a matter of confidence. Demarcus Robinson, once things started going on the fritz, never looked like he did in that 2018 season. Mecole Hardman, once things started going on the fritz and he was dropping passes and running the wrong routes and getting absolutely dressed down by Patrick Mahomes in the middle of the field, never looked again like he did as a rookie. If Kadarius Toney is able to get his confidence back, and I know this is like, it sounds like I'm talking about boxing, right? If he's able to get his moxie back. But if Kadarius Toney is able to get his confidence back, I mean, why can't we see the guy who debuted in Kansas City and stopped to adjust his gloves before making a jumping catch again? The thing, I don't know how a guy walks around, and I'm just going to put it out there, making the faces that Kadarius Toney makes, and I can't see that guy not being able to reclaim his confidence. You know what I mean? A guy who walks around making those faces can absolutely get his confidence back. Ruben says, I want to see some rugby laterals this season. I do not. I hope that Zammit was not just acquired in order to teach Kelsey how to better lateral the football. I hope that this was not the goal. Digger says, wish they would stop spreading the Florio story. I don't even know the Florio story. I can't stand Mike Florio. There are very few people in all. I'm not a media guy. I don't watch any news channels, any of it. There are very few people that I have as strong a distaste for as Mike Florio. The absolute hypocrisy of that guy. Now, here's the thing. Not going to make this about politics. Not going to make anything about politics. That is a promise for you from this channel. But Mike Florio is very outspoken on his politics. I remember Mike Florio when he was trying to get Pro Football Talk off the ground. I remember the types of articles that used to get run on Pro Football Talk. I remember the language that stooges like Mike Florio used to use. I remember the things he used to say. So for him to be proclaiming this holier than thou sort of persona these days, absolute knob slobber. I mean, just a knob slobber. Liam says, Kadarius Toney has not been causing noise so far this offseason. That's one thing he's got going for him. Also, he has a kid, and maybe he will focus more on football, not so much off the field issues. Well, congratulations to Kadarius Toney. I didn't know that is that a new thing? He just became a father? I did not know that. Devin says he was wanting the Chiefs to host the Texans. That would have been, I am interested to see how that game goes. That might be, if that is a throwback to the 2018, was it 18 or 19 Chiefs-Rams game, 54-51? I think that game has the potential to be one of those games. Ruben says, Robinson holding a football like a loaf of bread, don't remind me. Chad says, Robinson did have good games against the Raiders, including the 50th touchdown pass of that magical Mahomes season where I didn't know. Here's what I don't understand about that play. If memory serves me, you remember the play, right? It was like an 80-yard touchdown pass. Put Mahomes over 50 touchdowns, and I believe over 5,000 yards at the same time. And he walked into the end zone backwards. Didn't he get flagged for that? That's not taunting. Look, here's probably an unpopular opinion. I'm perfectly fine with taunting. I'm perfectly fine with it. Don't put your hands on anyone. Taunting is fine with me. I don't understand. Look, Star Wars wouldn't be great without Darth Vader, right? Terrell Owens was the perfect Darth Vader for 31 NFL franchises whenever he was on the field. Everybody hated him except for his team, and a lot of times even his team. But that's what sports is for. Chad says Florio would get slapped in the hood. Florio would get slapped a lot of places, I think. I don't think there's a lot of places that Florio... he's a dirt ball. The guy's a dirt ball. James says Skip Bayless. I don't really have a problem with Skip Bayless. Again, like taunting, and I know this is an unpopular opinion, but like taunting, assume that sports talk is for entertainment. Having a bad guy is a good thing. Now, the reason so many people hate Skip Bayless is because he's willing to play the game. He's sitting across from Shannon Sharpe. Shannon Sharpe, ironically, not the sharpest tool in the shed. Of course, Shannon Sharpe can identify Patrick Mahomes as a great talent. Go back to before Shannon Sharpe had been such a proclaimed enthusiast of Patrick Mahomes. Skip Bayless liked Patrick Mahomes. Every other time, every other week, he would like Patrick Mahomes, but he did. And when Shannon Sharpe came out as definitively pro Patrick Mahomes, Skip said, okay, I get to be anti-Patrick Mahomes. It's just the role I have to play. Skip Bayless, and why is that such a bad thing? And by the way, this is not the same as me saying what I'm saying about Mike Florio. Mike Florio is not being a wishy-washy. Mike Florio is not being a flag in the wind, right? Blowing wherever the wind goes. Mike Florio is saying one thing to get ahead, and the minute that he's ahead, turning on all those people. I guarantee you some of this stuff is still on the internet. The sort of stuff that Mike Florio was writing about and saying. So, Scott says, Chiefs Ravens week 1 starting off with a banger, an absolute banger. Hopefully, it's a banger in the W column this time. Dennis says, I was there for that game in LA. It was electric. Rams fans were telling me good game. We as fans were all exhausted. Yeah, that's one of those ones that even though that was a loss, I couldn't even be mad after that game. Like, it's sort of a black eye that Patrick Mahomes was the quarterback for the highest scoring team in NFL history that lost. But man, that was a fun game. It was such a college game. That was a great game. Ruben says NFL trying to take emotion out of the game, in my opinion. That's right. I also never understood why they took away the team celebrations. I'm glad they brought them back. But if your idea is that this is a team sport, why do you outlaw team celebrations? The NFL does not make sense most of the time. Scott says, as long as you don't taunt over the top of someone. I can agree with that. I think that taunting over the top of someone is the same thing as saying something about someone's mother. It's not right to punch you after you say something. It's not right to be punched for saying something about someone's mother. But I'm not going to be mad at the guy that punches you. If you stand over someone and taunt them, it's hard for me to be mad if they punch you. Scott says, I don't care for the standing over guy type of taunting, but I'm all for the peace sign, Terrell Owens stuff, and a lot of the other stuff, and a lot of the other taunting. So, Scott, are you saying that you were pro Terrell Owens? I loved the stuff with the running out to the middle of the star in Dallas. I thought that was great. Scott said, and I said, allegedly, I don't like Florio either. I don't know any. Does anyone like Florio? Does anyone? I can't think I have ever heard anyone say they like Florio. He's just a turd bird, man. Ruben says Skip is playing a role. He's harmless. Yeah. Nikki says, I'm with you. Taunting should be required. These are grown men, not little kids. I love it. Make it UFC. Make it, I mean, who was the last great talker in the NFL? Who was the last really great talker in the NFL? I mean, Tyreek, here's another unpopular opinion. I'm all right with Tyreek doing the stuff Tyreek is doing. I don't care. I mean, he's obviously just trying to stay in the news. He's obviously just trying to rile people up. Who cares? You know, some people are going to get dramatic about it, and that's fine. Gary says, taunting in the 80s, 90s would haunt people now. Yeah. 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 The level of stuff that has been taken out of sports is wild. Chad asks, will Felix Enrique Uzoma take a step forward, and what would a successful step forward look like? Mike Dana. I've said since he was drafted, I think his ceiling is Mike Dana. If he gets to be Mike Dana, not a great use of the 32nd overall pick, but it's still not a bust. Ruben says Terrell Owens was a savage. Gary says Deion Sanders. Scott says Brian Dawkins. Ruben says Tyreek just wants views. So here's the thing with Brian Dawkins, from what I remember, was just a talker on the field. I don't remember a whole lot of talk in the media. Maybe I am forgetting that. Deion Sanders is an all-timer. My favorite from Deion Sanders is when he was asked, because Atlanta drafted him. So Atlanta drafted him number 4 overall, I think. And Detroit went with Barry Sanders, number 3 overall. It's something like that. 3 and 4, 4 and 5, something like that. They asked him in the media, what would you have done if Detroit had drafted you at 3? And Deion said, I would have asked for so much money, they would have had to put me on layaway. What a great quote. What a great quote. That's the sort of like Conor McGregor type talk. That's the stuff I really love. Conor McGregor type quotes. I would have asked for so much money, they would have had to put me on layaway. Bone Thrower says Mike Florio never recovered over the Chiefs beating his Minnesota Vikings in the Super Bowl. I don't know how old Mike Florio is, but I think what you're telling me is that he's been raw since a very young age. I would absolutely agree with you, Bone Thrower. Scott says, yes, Pro TO pulling the Sharpie out was... I love that stuff. Because here's the thing, the only thing you're risking is yourself. Carrying a Sharpie, I mean, think of the shin splint if you get tackled on that thing, right? Tony says, what about kids picking up on talking smack? That okay? I mean, the only thing that's bad about it is if you're really taking it seriously. Tony, I'm sure you played some sport when you were younger. Surely there was a kid on the block that talked a whole lot of crap. If it made you mad, you just played harder, right? I think everything is taken too seriously in today's world. And if in the realm of sport, things are being taken too seriously, I think we've lost the plot. Tony says he fought. You weren't making millions, right? These guys making millions, maybe they're supposed to deal with it. I also think that galvanizes a fan base, right? Because I remember being a Chiefs fan and absolutely despising Shannon Sharpe. And this was when I was a kid. Shannon Sharpe terrorizing the Chiefs was when I was a kid. And those were bonding moments for me and my friends. That was the way that we got closer, as opposed to taking, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm willing to say maybe I'm wrong, but I'm absolutely pro trash talk. Chad says, who is your draft crush for the Chiefs, including UDFAs? On the UDFA side, it's Miles Battle, the cornerback. I think that he's got plus size, he's got plus speed, he's got plus explosiveness. He responded to me on Twitter when I asked for his pro day numbers because I couldn't find them anywhere. So he's got that from me too. As far as the draft picks are concerned, I think Jared Wiley has a real shot at being a game changer for the Kansas City Chiefs because the Chiefs have tried to use two tight ends so much recently. And I don't think that I've never been a big proponent of Noah Gray. I don't think that Noah Gray was what they had hoped he would be. So if Jared Wiley is able to come in and execute on his potential, I think that he could be one of the most consequential picks for the Kansas City Chiefs, assuming that Xavier Worthy is all right. I think that Jaden Hicks is probably my favorite pick of this draft as far as draft position versus the prospect. I think that he is, in my opinion, one of the higher values, and that is exciting because he's not a player that I had particularly paid attention to prior to the draft. Scott says Tyreek's backflip with the cell phone last year was dope. One of my favorite Tyreek moments, I don't remember if this was on Twitter. I don't remember if I saw this in a comment section on a highlight package. I just thought that it was too priceless. Remember when Tyreek Hill scored the touchdown, jumped in the stands, and took over the camera? You remember that moment. One thing I had never noticed until I saw this comment, the guy commented, Tyreek Hill is the first player in NFL history to record his own penalty flag. And you go back and you watch it, and when Tyreek takes that camera, you see the yellow flag flying. That's such a funny thing. That is so funny. The Kansas City Chiefs have had a player, Marcus Peters, throw a penalty flag. They've had a player in Travis Kelce throw his own penalty flag, and now they've had a player in Tyreek Hill record his own penalty flag. So the Kansas City Chiefs and penalty flags are simpatico. Ruben says, Chad Ochocinco kissed the baby. Ochocinco's very underrated. I don't think Ochocinco will ever really be appreciated for what it was that he did on the field. I don't think that he will ever be appreciated for what he did off the field. And another thing, I'm a big Marvin Hagler guy. Marvin Hagler is my favorite boxer. I don't think he's the greatest boxer of all time. I don't think he's the best to ever do it. I don't think he's the GOAT. He's my favorite boxer. A lot of people don't know that Chad Ochocinco changing his name to Ochocinco was not the first time that this happened. Announcers refused to call Marvin Hagler Marvelous Marvin Hagler. So he had his name legally changed to Marvelous Marvin Hagler. So just being able to tell that story will always keep Chad Ochocinco in my heart, allowing me to tell a Marvin Hagler story. Gary says, you're absolutely right. People take stuff too seriously. Ruben says, too sensitive nowadays. I think it's somewhere in between those two, right? Is it too sensitive or is it taking things too seriously? Is there some middle ground there? Something for which we don't quite have the words, but we know when we see it. Digger says strong safety did DT dirty SS did DT dirty that night. Oh, Shannon Sharp and Derek Thomas? They fought, right? Am I remembering that right? There was a fight. I haven't thought of that in years. Chad says, I grew up severely disliking John Elway. Yeah, I could not stand John Elway. I hated John Elway. Those stills of him handing the Lombardi trophy over to the Kansas City Chiefs last year with that sneer upon his face. This is one of the best moments about that Super Bowl. So for the Kansas City Chiefs, it cemented a dynasty. For the Raiders, it was in their stadium that the Kansas City Chiefs won a Super Bowl before they won like 9 games. For the Broncos, John Elway had to hand over the Lombardi trophy. And even in this perfect culmination of the AFC West, where the Kansas City Chiefs are on top as they have been for 7 years now, where the Raiders are being embarrassed in their own stadium, where John Elway is having to look at the best quarterback in the NFL, even in this pinnacle of AFC West irony, the Chargers are completely absent. How perfect was that? The Chargers were nowhere in that situation. Was it Scott says, was it Chad Johnson or T.O. that pulled out the cell phone? Wasn't that Joe Horn? Wasn't Joe Horn the cell phone? T.O. was the Sharpie. I believe Joe Horn was the cell phone. Ocho Cinco. Did he have a prop? I'm sure he did. That was the right time frame. Gary says, how about the time Kelsey threw a penalty flag back to so that's what I was talking about. I don't think it was a penalty flag. I think he took out his hand wiper. He has that towel on him all the time. I think he threw his towel back at the referee. I don't think it was an actual flag. So they've got a real flag into the stands, a fake flag at the referee, and Tyreek recording his own flag. Scott says, I always liked Bernard Hopkins. Another solid pick. Marvin Hagler is my favorite for so many reasons because he was the original Sith, too. He was the original guy that changed his name. He was the original Sith. For anyone who doesn't know, Marvin Hagler, for, I think, 3 months before a bout, he had this property in someplace in the Northeast where it's cold and rainy and snowy all the time. And it was an old hotel. And he would lock himself in there to train. Away from everyone, bleeding stones, just massacring himself in the darkness, in solitude, being miserable, and blaming all of it on his opponent. You're the reason I'm here. You're the reason I'm doing this. Marvin Hagler was the man. And then after he retired, he moved to Italy and became a movie star in Italian movies. Just what a story. What a story. He stopped when he decided to stop. And then if you have not seen a documentary on Marvin Hagler, there are some great ones on YouTube. Ruben says that was so beautiful. Elway's face. Oh, so good. CJ says, "Oh, you guys are not kidding. John Elway was the worst to me, and then him giving us the trophy. I thought it just took it over the edge of the cup." I can't imagine how many strings Elway must have tried to pull in order not to have to hand that trophy over to the Chiefs. Antonio says, "Typical charge." Yeah, in absence. In absentia. Scott says, Shannon Sharp kept saying a phone number, and it was a girl's that Derek Thomas had been seeing. Oh, is that what happened between Shannon Sharp and Derek Thomas? I had never heard that story. Boxing was so dope in the day, MMA took over. Here's the most interesting theory I have ever heard on that. I believe it was a documentary. It was one of the old ESPN. There used to be a secondary ESPN channel that was a classics. It was ESPN Classic. They had documentaries on there all the time. And I believe it was a documentary about Muhammad Ali. And I can't remember his name, but there was one of those old-time boxing beat writers. And they asked him, what's wrong with the heavyweight division now? Why are there no great heavyweights? I mean, this was just post Mike Tyson. Why are there no great heavyweights? That used to be the thing. If you were the heavyweight champion of the world in boxing, you were the toughest guy anybody had ever seen. Why are there no great heavyweights anymore? And he said, why are there no great heavyweights anymore? Well, because the greatest heavyweight in the world right now is playing middle linebacker for the Baltimore Ravens. He was talking about Ray Lewis. And it was just such a great point. There's no boxing anymore because MMA has come over and taken all of the guys who are not playing football now. So boxing, I mean, there's a couple guys in boxing, but it's not what it was. Ruben says, Hagler, a tough blue-collar fighter. They don't make fighters like that anymore. And here's the thing. Tough, blue-collar, but he talked trash in his own way. That red hat that just said war, right? He was not the most flamboyant, but he definitely did things in his own way. James says Ocho had a Hall of Famer jacket. Did he? I don't remember that at all. Scott says Travis jerked a flag off. Pause. And threw it back at the ref. Think EB blow up on the sideline, and they kind of had some tension on the sidelines for a while. He also kept dancing horse dancing at the Raiders punter. I remember that. Remember fights on CBS. Miss those days. Yet boxing, well, and it's such a great. The great thing about boxing also, everybody but everybody who's been on a treadmill has pretended they were a boxer, right? You were Rocky. You were Marvin Hagler running on the roadside. You were Floyd Mayweather with the car behind you and the music blaring. You don't really get that from MMA. I can't go to the gym and pretend that I'm a starting cornerback, right? But everybody gets to have that fantasy about boxing. And when it's taken away, there's something gone from Americana. James T. Kirk says Shaft. I'm assuming I missed something there. James also says Burt Sugar. James, you lost me. I don't know where we're at. Ruben says Tyson was fast and hard punching cruiserweight. Tyson was a cruiserweight? I might have my boxing weight classes confused. Daniel says, good to see you. It's good to see you too, Daniel. Glad you're here. CJ Max says, some of y'all might not remember this, but the wide world of sports. Tyson Fury is fun to watch. That's right, Scott. Ruben says MMA gives fighters more ways to win. Oh, I agree that MMA is infinitely more fun to watch. But I think that MMA, I think that the diminishment of boxing does take something away from Americana. I think that there is something, and boxing's a worldwide thing, don't get me wrong, but I think that there is something gone from the zeitgeist if boxing is not strong. I think I'm just about to go to bed, guys. So it was good being here with you. It is an interesting game with which to start the season. Bert Sugar and Dick Shaft were those old ESPN classic. Oh, okay. Yeah, I was out to left field on that one, James. I didn't know what was going on. I thought I was being propositioned. Daniel says Tyson Fury is awesome. I agree. Gary remembers the wide world of sports. Anything before I go? Good to see you, Gary. Glad to have you here. Going once, going twice. I will see you guys tomorrow with another video. I think I will be back with the UDFAs. So hopefully there is something to look forward to there. I can't remember which player I'm going to be covering. I guess it'll be a surprise tomorrow. See you guys.